It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. It's up to you. Party leaders make their final appeals to persuade floating voters in the final hours before the general election. Prediction time. The final poll for Sky News indicates that Labour will win the biggest majority seen in almost 200 years.
Neither party represent an exciting future, and actually, to me, they're two wings of the same plane.
So you need a magician with a wand to, to turn it around.
Also tonight, President Biden fights to convince the public and his own party that he's up to the job of running for the White House. Jamaica prepares to feel the full force of Hurricane Beryl after battering islands in the eastern Caribbean. The daughter and son-in-law of Captain Sir Tom Moore are banned from being charity trustees. And Sir Mark Cavendish sprints to become the most prolific stage winner in the history of the Tour de France. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. This time tomorrow we'll have the results of the exit poll and the first clear picture of who will be the next Prime Minister. An indication perhaps of a general election which is likely to bring seismic change to the UK's political landscape. Leaders of all the main parties were out again today attempting to win over voters who haven't yet made up their minds. Tonight, the final exclusive seat-by-seat poll for Sky News predicting that Labour is on course to win the biggest majority since 1832. Detail on that to come from Sam Coates in a moment. First, though, our political editor, Beth Rigby, has this report from the last day on the campaign trail.
Less than 24 hours to go, caution now giving way to quiet confidence. Keir Starmer's message of change, now the reality he could soon be living.
We've got to get out there every minute, every hour of today and tomorrow, all the way through till 10 o'clock. Fight for every single vote. This is an incredible opportunity for change across the whole of the United Kingdom.
This the final push in a campaign dominated by massive poll leads for this lot. A PM in waiting trying to inject some jeopardy into a race that seemed over before it was even run. You're on the cusp of being the first Labour leader since Tony Blair, the first Labour leader this century to win power from opposition. As you contemplate that and what follows, what's your biggest fear?
My fear at the moment is that people will not feel the necessity to go out and vote for change. This is not a done deal.
Hand on heart, yes or no, are you daring to imagine now that you might become this country's Prime Minister? Like, hand on heart.
I am waiting until 10 o'clock tomorrow, but we've prepared this party for government. We have prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement, and we will hit the ground running, because my job will be to deliver for people across the country who desperately need the change, not just that they expect, which in my view they are entitled to.
A new dawn.
A new dawn.
See you later.
Whatever, but on the other side.
But Blair's description of his own landslide highlighting this leader's trickier terrain. The national mood cynical, the promises of change modest, and the public purse stretched.
Hi girls, how are you?
Hello.
The PM took a massive gamble in calling this election, but from his damp start to D-Day and the betting scandal, it just hasn't paid off.
Are you looking forward to the holidays?
Oh, yes.
When did you break up?
The PM about to be rested, whether he wants it or not, but still making his pitch to the very end.
Lots of people want to say this is a foregone conclusion. Analysis shows that's not true. Your vote can make a difference to preventing that majority and having your taxes cut and your pension protected. So get out there and vote Conservative.
The Lib Dems routed by the Tories in 2015.
Bye-bye, Tories.
Now about to reap the rewards of the Conservatives' collapsing vote.
having too much fun.
Nearly all of Ed Davies' target seats are in Tory territory.
I think excited and nervous at the same time. We've been getting a great response for voters. I'm really grateful for those people who were thinking of voting Labour or Green in what I call the blue wall seats, the home counties, or the West Country, or rural Britain, and realise that they can't win.
But the size of the Labour majority rests on many moving parts, not least how far John Swinney and the SNP fall in Scotland and Nigel Farage's reform rises in Tory and Labour territory across England and Wales. Labour could be on the cusp of a historic landslide of a scale not seen in decades. Keir Starmer has managed to seize the moment. If he walks through the door to number 10 on Friday, he then needs to decide what to do with it. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Well, during the campaign, we've brought you polls indicating likely voting forecasts. Tonight, we have Sky News' third and final poll-based projection by YouGov of this election campaign. The results indicate a Labour landslide of the like we've not seen before. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
It's the eve of the election. This is the gold standard polling projection. It is a 212 majority for the Labour Party. Here it is. This figure is nothing like anything Keir Starmer could have imagined. You have to go all the way back to 1832 to find a bigger majority in Parliament. And majorities in our lifetime, like Tony Blair's in 1997, well, that wasn't within touching distance at 179. Now, it's important to say this is a projection. And with any projection, particularly importantly on the one on the eve of a poll, there's a range of uncertainty. There's a margin of error. So the projection, central projection, is 212 seats. That could be, it could, under these numbers, with this margin of error, mean a majority of something as large as 282 seats, which would be extraordinary. But it could mean a majority as little as 132 seats. Now, I say the words as little as. That is still a stonking majority that would give Sir Keir Starmer complete command of the House of Commons. The biggest ever number of seats for the Labour Party for this man, Keir Starmer. The smallest ever number of seats for the Tories under this man, Rishi Sunak, at 102. Over the course of this campaign, the Tories have actually lost seats, lost 38 seats. Labour up 9. The Liberal Democrats, the big winners of this campaign as well as Reform. So you can see how the campaign has actually made Labour's job easier. 16 members of the Cabinet who are standing in this election look set to lose. New ones in this polling projection include Michelle Donnellan, the Science Secretary, and Esther McVey, the Minister for Common Sense, she's often called, Conservative Party Chairman, the Chancellor, the Defence Secretary, the Education Secretary, the Leader of the Commons. These two were likely leadership contenders, likely now to lose their seats. The Justice Secretary and the Chief Whip and others, all of them now likely, according to YouGov, if their projection is right, to lose their seats. This gives you a sense of how well Boris Johnson did in 2019. Look at all this blue all the way up from the north, the former red wall, right down to the southwest. But now let's look at how the country could look politically on Friday morning if the result is anything like what YouGov is projecting. And you can see all of that blue disappearing. Red returning to Scotland as Labour get a toehold back north of the border, the red wall re-established, and the Liberal Democrats down in the southeast, with the Tories pushed really into this central belt of southern England and East Anglia. A complete redrawing of the British political map. Britain is about to go in a very different direction if the result is anything like this.
Sam Coates there. Well, throughout this election campaign, we've been reporting from the constituency of Grimsby and Cleethorpes. It may be a new seat, but it's right at the heart of the Red Wall, which the Conservatives won over to secure the last election. And as such, it's high on both Labour and Tory target lists. Our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, has been to see whether voters' opinions have changed.
It's been a tough sell, this election campaign. And with just hours left to decide, some just haven't bought into it.
My view on it all is that neither party represent an exciting future, and actually, to me, the two wings of the same plane.
There's been a lot of talk about change. Do you feel...
How many years have we heard about change? How many years? I think we're stuffed. I honestly think we're screwed.
Azam sees a country that's really struggling.
I don't know who can bring it up. You need a magician with a wand to, you know what I mean, to turn it around. I don't know where that magician is going to come from.
You've not found that magician in the campaign this time?
No.
We've heard so much of that frustration in both Grimsby and Cleethorpes this year. These are towns that need an injection of optimism. But on the eve of polling day, where's the inspiration? George doesn't see it. His family runs flower stalls at markets all over the country. Do you sense any optimism?
There's more worry than there is optimism. It's what's going to happen if Labour gets in. What changes are going to be made? Is it going to make us more financially stable? Is it going to put us further into debt?
When we started focusing on this battleground constituency back in March, we visited the cobbler's shop. Last time, Suzanne the seamstress told us it felt like the heart had been ripped out of the country. We returned to see how she's feeling about the future. So it's election eve. Have you got a bit of optimism?
The only thing we've got is that there's going to be a change. For better or for worse, we don't know yet, but there's going to be a change, so you've got to have a bit of hope and optimism.
If it is that change, what does it look like in your ideal world? What does it need to look like?
Well, community. They need to put something back into the communities, don't they? All over the country, everywhere. All shops are closing down and all the rest of it. They need to put some money back in and fund everything properly, and that way it'll bring it back up again.
She's clinging to that last shred of hope that these towns, this country, can move beyond this campaign and into something better. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Cleethorpes.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of Beth Rigby, who's live for us tonight in Downing Street. So the final polls are in, Beth. The prospect of seismic change, a shake-up possibly of the opposition. So what is your assessment at the end of this election campaign?
Well, look, Anna, Rishi Sunak called this election 6 weeks ago, and what is almost certain is that on Friday, Sir Keir Starmer will walk through that door as Britain's Prime Minister. That outcome is now almost completely assured. So take that in. That is a stupendous victory if it comes to pass. Labour suffered its worst ever defeat since 1935 in the last general election. People thought Labour might be locked out of power for a decade. Sir Keir Starmer himself said he had a mountain to climb to bring Labour back. Well, tonight he stands on the cusp of becoming only the fourth ever Labour leader to win from opposition. The last man who did that, you will probably know it, is Tony Blair in 1997. So Keir Starmer is on course for a big majority. How big it could be is difficult to say. There are dozens of marginal seats still in the toss-up. But the evidence suggests it's going to be better than Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority in 2019, and it could go much further than that. And after 4 election defeats on the bounce, this is going to feel transformative for the Labour Party and for the country too. But I'd also say that the circumstances of this victory are not straightforward. There could be dozens of seats across the country where Labour win by small margins and low vote shares. Starmer's support could be broad but very shallow too. And that's why in the campaign you've heard Keir Starmer talking about leading humbly, about putting government back into the service of working people, about putting country before party, because he knows all too well that the victory could be great, but the inheritance is hard, and the honeymoon with the British people and him could be very short indeed. So tomorrow will be momentous, as will Friday, but it will only be the end of the beginning for a Labour Party, perhaps into government, with a new mountain to climb.
Beth, a truly fascinating night unfolding. Thank you very much indeed, live there in Downing Street. So don't forget, Sky News' Election Night Live starts tomorrow night at 9 p.m. and then we'll be with you through the night into Friday morning and then through all the key events of the day before rounding them all up for you from 7 p.m. on Friday night. Well, to the US election now, where cracks in confidence over whether Joe Biden is fit to run continue to deepen following his dismal performance in a TV debate against Donald Trump. According to reports in the New York Times, the president is consulting allies about whether to continue, but that has been denied by the White House. Tonight, Mr. Biden is meeting Democratic governors, with the next few days looking pivotal. Our US correspondent James Matthews has this report.
In Washington, D.C., they're preparing a 4th of July party. This was Sister Sledge on Capitol Hill and their sound check. Across town, the sound was of a president in crisis. Inside the White House, Joe Biden was performing a Medal of Honor ceremony. Inside his party, there is concern that includes calls for him to step down.
Consider putting our country first and putting aside your personal interest and make that tough decision like Lyndon Johnson did under different circumstances to step aside and let us get an energetic new candidate.
Biden is going to lose to Trump. I know that's difficult, but I think the damage has been done by that debate.
President Biden has got to go out there and on a sustained basis show he has the stamina and can do the job.
Dealing with everything we have to do with
Biden's debate performance has caused serious concern among Democrats that doubts over a president's fitness for office will cost them the election.
I know how to tell the truth.
Since the debate, Biden's public appearances have seen speeches by teleprompter.
no one is above the law.
But no answers to journalists' questions.
Unfortunately,
stage management hasn't satisfied a party seeking a robust performance to offer reassurance.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Questions on a president's health and future are fielded by his staff.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Is President Biden considering stepping down?
Absolutely not. He had a cold, he was jet lagged. The president is clear-eyed, and he is staying in the race.
Many see you as his natural replacement. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely, unequivocally not. I'm here as a passionate supporter, not just defender, and advocate for not only his record, but his vision moving forward.
Would-be replacements were dismissing talk of succession before and after the TV debate.
I have been privileged and proud.
Growing doubts have grown attention around alternatives. Republican campaign ads are already targeting the vice president.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
The president is holding an evening meeting with Democratic governors here at the White House. On Friday, he'll sit down for a TV interview. In an earlier call with campaign workers, he insisted he is running. No one's pushing me out, he said. But according to the New York Times, he has acknowledged that possibility, telling one ally he may have to salvage his candidacy if he can't convince the public he's up for the job. The same newspaper is carrying a poll that shows Trump has widened his lead over Biden to 6 points, his biggest lead of the race. For a president figuring out his future, it's the voice of the voter, and it won't go unheard.
James is live in Washington for us now, and the White House is clear, James, he fights on. But the next few days are clearly crucial for Joe Biden to prove he can go the distance.
Yeah, they are, Anna. He's got this meeting with Democratic governors tonight, the unscripted TV interview on Friday. Next week, we're expecting a solo news conference at the NATO conference in Washington, D.C. Biden's difficulty through all these experiences, particularly tonight, when he'll face serious questions from governors, Democrat governors in key battleground states among them. His difficulty is that he cannot offer them guarantees that what they saw last Thursday they won't see again. They saw the impact of his poor performance last Thursday. They know that he's one bad performance away from the sense of crisis being deepened further. And these polls will worry the Democratic Party. Trump 6 points ahead of Biden among likely voters. That's the biggest lead he's enjoyed since 2015. The same poll showed that 74% of voters think Biden's too old for office. That's a 5% swing since the debate. So that's troubling for Democrats. The difference between a few months ago and now, when the polls still were bad for Biden, Trump has been ahead in the polls, but before Thursday, Biden was on a trajectory that was arcing upwards slowly. Now he's on a trajectory that is arcing downwards quickly. And perhaps worst-case scenario for Democrats is that he gets through the next few days, limps along and hits that bad performance at a time when it's too late for a reversal, perhaps September the 10th, when he's due to debate Donald Trump for a second time.
James, live in Washington, thank you. Jamaica is bracing itself for 140-mile-an-hour winds from Category 4 Hurricane Beryl, which has already brought death and destruction to the Caribbean and is now approaching and brushing the south coast. Beryl has already flattened parts of Grenada and Union Island, which lies off St Vincent and the Grenadines. It is now hitting Jamaica, bringing life-threatening conditions from devastating winds, a significant storm surge and torrential rain. The Cayman Islands will see similar conditions early on Thursday. It's expected to weaken a little as it continues westwards and is due to make landfall on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula on Friday. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports now from Jamaica.
UNICEF says Hurricane Beryl could put at least 3 million children in the Caribbean at risk. The Category 4 hurricane is fast approaching Jamaica.
They've heard the warnings about Hurricane Beryl, a monster storm heading Jamaica's way. And Hellshire Beach is dangerously exposed. But Nadine, like others, is staying here until she has no option.
Since I live here from 2008, I haven't seen it as what they are expressing and what this storm and the news are saying. So actually, we are here seeing if we see any more further eruption, we have to make a move.
An emergency curfew is in place across this island. Streets that would usually be buzzing, abandoned. The last time Jamaica was hit by such a ferocious storm was decades ago. Do you remember the last time that a storm hit Jamaica like this?
Yes, I remember quite well. It was very disastrous. We doesn't want that again. I pray to the Almighty God that it don't reach Jamaica because we cannot take a disaster here right now.
The sea, normally a lifeline in these tourist and fishing towns, will carry the fury of Hurricane Beryl.
Nowhere is safe on the coastline. The water is what we worried about, because as you know, the storm surge comes with a force and destroy buildings and so forth. So that is our greatest threat. When the hurricane hit, there can be looting and so forth. So we have to be here to protect our boats and our businesses and so forth.
Beryl has already wrought misery and destruction across the Eastern Caribbean. Several people have died. And in Venezuela, heavy flooding has affected thousands, with widespread power outages and no safe drinking water. This hurricane is more powerful than any in history at this time of year. It's grown so quickly too. Perhaps it's the best evidence yet that warming ocean temperatures are making weather like this more common and more deadly. And it's the smallest, most vulnerable nations that are bearing the brunt of climate change.
I don't think it's really nature, I think it's like the bigger guys playing with the globe, you know what I mean? Because we never have a storm in this month yet. And the way they say it's going to hit Jamaica, I think is some messing up going on with the weather.
78-year-old Beryl coming in Jamaica right now.
This is a relaxed nation and a resilient one. They're hoping here that this hurricane spares them its worst, knowing that this changing climate means the next may not be far behind. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Jamaica.
The daughter and son-in-law of Captain Sir Tom Moore have been banned from being charity trustees or senior managers by the Charity Commission. Hannah Ingram Moore and her husband Colin founded the Captain Tom Foundation in June 2020 in honour of the war veteran after he shot to fame by doing sponsored laps of his garden during the COVID pandemic and raising tens of millions of pounds for the NHS. But an investigation into financial mismanagement began after his death. Sabah Chowdhury has more.
100 laps before his 100th birthday and raising millions for the NHS. Captain Sir Tom Moore became the unlikely hero of the pandemic. Celebrated with a #1 record, a military flypass and a knighthood. But since his death in 2021, a cloud has hung over his legacy. A scandal relating to mismanagement of funds by his family over the charity in his name. And now, Captain Tom's daughter Hannah Ingram Moore and her husband Colin have been banned as trustees by the charity watchdog. On the same grass Captain Tom did his famous laps, the Ingram Moores were granted planning permission for a building in the charity's name. But instead, they went off-plan with a spa and home cinema, demolished earlier this year after a legal battle. The family also set up a private company acquiring ownership of the Captain Tom brand, and £800,000 profit from the veterans' books went to the business. In a statement, the family say they fundamentally disagree with the watchdog's decision to ban them as trustees, describing the 2-year-long inquiry as a harrowing and debilitating ordeal. And they maintain they never accessed or made any payments from the charity's bank accounts. But the Charity Commission say their evidence was serious enough to warrant their decision. Until then, the inquiry continues. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News.
So Mark Cavendish has broken the Tour de France stage wins record, taking his 35th victory at the iconic event. The 39-year-old, who was knighted in the King's Birthday honours last month, had planned to retire at the end of last season, but changed his mind to ride in one more tour this summer. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, has the story.
This is what Sir Mark Cavendish does best. Honed over 15 times competing at the Tour de France, all that experience and expertise, mastering the sprint finish, building to this moment.
He's hit the front here, Mark Cavendish is there!
A record 35th stage win.
It is history!
More than anyone else in the 121 years of cycling's premier race. The record held since 1974 by Belgian rider Eddy Merckx, only equalled by Cavendish in 2021, after 5 winless years with illness and injury. And the prospect of ever eclipsing it looked over after crashing out of last year's tour and breaking his collarbone. But retirement plans were put off, the Astana team going all in to accomplish Project 35. But this tour began last week for the 39-year-old with vomiting in the scorching Italian heat. Never write him off, the recovery and the resolve. And 16 years after that first tour win, the Manx Missiles milestone moment was accomplished in a small town near Lyon.
For us, he's just Cav. He's bubbly, he's enthusiastic, he's got a huge love for the sport and an incredible passion for the power of the sport. So that's how he'll be remembered as an individual, but fundamentally as the world's greatest ever road racing sprinter.
When the Isle of Man rider first entered the Tour de France in 2007, just one stage win would have satisfied him. But now Mark Cavendish is the most prolific stage winner, cycling's greatest ever sprinter. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Now, finally, throughout the general election, our home editor, Jason Farrell, has been travelling across Britain with a parliamentary bench, offering voters the chance to take a seat and tell us what's important to them. His final stop was at a biker festival in Stratford-upon-Avon.
We've tested the temperature in Cornwall, the direction of travel in Wales, the way the wind is blowing in Scotland. But in all the characters and opinions we've gathered, there's one demographic we nearly missed. Bikers. Welcome to the Adventure Bike Rider Festival in Warwickshire. Glastonbury on wheels.
What matters is that people actually read the manifestos and not just go for the headlines, and actually understand what it means and how the parties are actually going to achieve it, rather than saying, oh, we're going to do this great thing. Yes.
Have you scrolled through the manifestos?
I haven't.
Never mind, it was good advice. Everyone here shares the same passion, but when it comes to politics... Who's appealing to you?
If I'm brutally honest, none of them whatsoever.
None of them?
None of them.
Very tempted to spoil my ballot.
I want to see a change. I think 14 years of conservatism, I think we all feel the same way.
I disagree. I'm not sure it's change. I don't think the Conservatives are Conservatives anymore. Taxes are going up, whoever's in power.
One Conservative message seems to be cutting through, not to give Labour a thumping majority.
I think I'm going to vote for Conservatives, and I think it's a tactical vote as much as anything, because I'm concerned about a massive Labour majority and the implications that might have.
I'm probably going to go Labour, and it's going to be a tactical vote, just to not be Tory.
There seems to be a lot of voting against parties, fewer people proud to vote for a party.
If I'm actually honest, I have already voted, and whilst I said I was going to spoil my paper, I couldn't bring myself to actually spoil it.
Do you go Tory?
I did.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm a shy Tory. Maybe I shouldn't.
I think
put my
most
hand
Tories
up.
should be shy.
This will make pollsters shudder. How many shy Tories are out there?
Are you ashamed of the Tories?
I'm actually embarrassed about some of the things that our Prime Ministers have done in the last few years.
So what have we learned as we've dragged our bench across Britain? Everyone who sat on the bench has been asked the same opening question. What matters to you in this election? The most common answer, the cost of living. And one recurring word used by the first and last person to sit on this bench. What do you want most in the next government?
Integrity, I think is the one word answer.
You can't trust any of it. It just feels like there's a lack of integrity. And even when you're watching the debates, it's like a playground argument, and I struggle to take it seriously.
It's time to return our bench. Time for you to decide who gets a go on it next. Who's least likely to mess it up? Jason Farrell, Sky News.
We'll miss the bench, won't we? That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the Observer's chief leader writer Sonia Soda. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories, we will be discussing this on the front of the Sun, which lays out its own view on the general election. The headline, time for a new manager, and we don't mean sack Southgate. Back with that and plenty more in just a moment. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Polling day, of course, is what we're looking at. It's time to see what's making the headlines then with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the Observer's chief lead writer Sonia Soda. Welcome to both of you. So let's see the front pages you'll wake up to on polling day. Starting with The Sun and with polls predicting that Labour will win the biggest majority since 1832. The paper changes sides with the headline, "Time for a new manager, and we don't mean sack Southgate." That YouGov poll with Sky News is also the lead story for tomorrow's Times. The FT predicts a bleak night for the Tories while forecasting a landslide win for Labour. The Eye declares Labour's lead narrows in final poll, but Starmer still on course for a landslide. The Metro has the simple headline, "The Nation Decides." The Guardian says Keir Starmer has hailed a new age of hope as Britain goes to the polls. Unsurprisingly, The Express endorses the Tories but appears to imply they won't win, promising to continue carrying the torch of conservatism until it is burning bright again. The Daily Mail urges readers to vote for Nigel Farage's Reform UK party to stop Labour winning a supermajority. Well, The Telegraph homes in on Labour's plans for council tax and says the wealth would be the first to suffer new property levies. And not even a picture on the front of the Mirror, just a plea for people to vote for change, vote Labour. While The Star enjoys a whimsical rant against the Tories, saying a fond farewell to all those self-entitled clowns, chancellors, liars, wazzicks, cheats, sociopaths, scumbags, and a word I won't repeat. Can't quite see it there, thank goodness. Toodle pip is the final headline. Yep, they went for it. Anyway, a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. You know, goodness me, this is polling day papers and still so much to digest, not least in the Times, which is this YouGov Sky News poll, which is devastating for the Conservatives and historic, Sonia, for Labour.
Absolutely. And, the funny thing is, it's not the only poll to make these kinds of predictions either. So there are now a number of what's called MRPs. They're polls that take a very, very large set of data about how people say they're going to vote, and they model it to try and predict what that means for every single seat. So they're quite different to the sort of national level voting polls. There's now a whole host of them, including the one that's been done for Sky News, that suggests that Labour is on track to win a majority of 200, which would be huge and historic. We've been getting some of that data for the last few weeks now. At the start of the election campaign, there were a lot of expectations the polls were going to narrow. It doesn't look like that happened. There are dangers, though, for both parties in this, right? So the Conservatives are a bit worried as a result of these polls, people just thinking, well, it's over, there's absolutely no point getting out and voting Conservative. And actually, Labour's worried that seeing these polls might make its voters stay at home. So you've still got a bit of a war of words with the parties where, both parties are trying to say, maybe just don't believe the polls, get out there and vote. And, obviously they're making the point that you've got to go, that there's no vote will be cast, or certainly no vote cast in person will be cast until tomorrow. Sorry, I bungled that slightly.
No, we got it.
But we got there in the end.
Yes. I mean, most of the polling day newspapers in the past have been the get out to vote, but this is still quite detailed stuff, actually.
Yes.
We'll come on to the Telegraph a bit later on. It's got sort of policy messaging on there as well. In terms of the Tories, though, Ali, 102 was the central forecast for this YouGov MRP. Has to be said, there's a big range in this, isn't there? From 78 to 129 seats that they might get. Similarly for Labour, a big range from 391 to 466 seats, with the central prospect of being 431, extraordinary numbers. Is there any chance, do you think, that a poll like that, on the eve of polling, will actually get people to say, do you know, I do want the Conservative Party to be the opposition, I'm going to vote? Will it work in their favour, the threat of the supermajority?
Well, you're ruling out, Anna, that the Tories could all turn it around and still win a great victory tomorrow. No one thinks that. Not even I can come up with that. Look, I think that the Tories have realised quite early on in this campaign things have not gone well for them at all. You would expect an election campaign to be run like clockwork, particularly when the Prime Minister himself can actually decide when it is. I mean, it's been one mishap after the other. We had the announcement in the rain. You can't blame the Prime Minister for the elements, but you can for the D-Day debacle and also for the Gamblegate saga. So it's not been a great campaign at all, and that's putting it mildly. In terms of the polling, the polls are all over the place. You've got the MRP polls that are saying the Tories could be down to 100, well, the YouGov poll saying down to 100 seats, another MRP poll saying down to 60 seats. I don't know. It looks dire whichever way you look at it. They're going to potentially get hammered. You can see the desperation in the papers. And the line that they've used in recent weeks during this campaign has been, don't hand Labour the supermajority. I think it was Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, that first coined that phrase, and it got caught on. It's not something that we're used to in this country. This is an American term in relation to what happens in Congress over there. But I think that is the only line that the Tories have had to peddle. Now, I have spoken to some people, just anecdotally, who do feel a little bit uncomfortable about Labour having such a seismic majority that they can do whatever they want. And you can hear that from some of the voters. Is it going to make a blind bit of difference?
Or the Lib Dems being the party of opposition.
The Lib Dems being the party of opposition. I look, Ed Davies had an interesting campaign. He's been clowning around all over the place. But I think that it's going to be the Remainers' revenge, particularly in the Blue Wall in the South. All those frustrated voters who voted Remain in the referendum, that held their noses in 2019 because they wanted to just be done with Brexit and they couldn't vote for Corbyn. Corbyn's gone. They've got Starmer. He's palatable. And Brexit is a thing of the past. They're going to get their revenge in this election.
Remainers' revenge. That sounds like a great cocktail.
No. I do think it's a point that's not been made enough, actually.
Yeah, I think it is. And if you look at all those leafy shire seats where typically, I mean, Esher and Walton, all these kind of seats, right? Cheshire and Amersham, they've already got. All of those seats are just going to solidify and solidify. And a few years ago, I mean, these are seats where you'd weigh the Tory majority. These are absolutely rock-solid Tory seats, which the whole swathe could potentially go.
Yes, and indeed, Jeremy Hunt being one of those in that sort of area you talk
absolutely.
about. And this MRP YouGov poll suggesting that 16 out of the 26 cabinet members could actually lose their seats as well. So, we watch those moments. In the meantime, the Sun, Sonia, has decided to come out for Labour, despite some polling showing that actually Reform voters are more their ilk at the moment. But anyway, we were waiting for this, weren't they? Were you surprised they've gone for it?
I wasn't, because they've also got quite a few Labour supporters, the polling indicates. And if there's one thing we know about the Sun, it does like to back a winner. And the polls make it pretty clear who the pollsters are expecting to be the winner. So I don't think newspaper editorials matter as much as they did. You know, it was a very big moment in '97. Yes. Is the Sun going to back Tony Blair? And then they came out and they did it. And they did it with some enthusiasm. And you'll see there's a bit of a contrast with the Sun's front page. Because I think the thing that's most striking about it is it doesn't mention the words vote, Labour or Keir Starmer, and in fact it's got a picture of Gareth Southgate. And I think the metaphor that they're going for here is probably the sign of a lack of enthusiasm at that paper for what they maybe felt that they had to do, which was just fall into line and back a Labour government, because it looks like Labour's going to win tomorrow.
Well, we've got the Sun and the Daily Mirror on the same side. If you look at the Daily Mirror,
but it's very interesting you mentioned the lack of enthusiasm, Sonia, because I think there's a lack of enthusiasm generally, but it's one of desperation, frustration, and exasperation and exhaustion that the Labour is going to get such a big majority. It's not out of any great love for the Labour Party or any great excitement about their programme. People are just exhausted with the Tories.
I think that's actually I would agree with you that I think if you look at the polling, the number one reason that people give for voting Labour is to get the Conservatives out, and there really is it's a very strong anti-Conservative sentiment, and you can see that in the amount of tactical voting that the polls are detecting. Yes. And we saw that in the local election results. And there's quite, people are cynical about politics in general at the moment, and the capacity of politicians to deliver. So I agree with you. I think people in Labour know that, actually, and I think they've got a job to do still. Even if they get this massive majority, it sounds weird to say, but if they get a massive majority, they know they've still got, the public's still got a little journey to go on.
Move on, I've got a pack, if you don't mind, I just want to get onto the Daily Mail, which has got a warning, really, about splitting the vote on the right. Effectively, protest votes for Reform UK could give Labour Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner an overwhelming election victory. The point being, if 14% of a vote in a seat goes to Reform, that could well make the difference for, even safe Conservative seats.
But you see, I don't think it is a protest vote for reform. I think reform is actually where many Tories would like to see the Tory party go. I mean, if you read the scathing op-ed that Suella Braverman had in the Telegraph, they're absolutely scathing about the fact that people are voting for Farage because he is effectively doing what the Tory party should have done. It's all over. We have to prepare for opposition. The Tory party, she was imploring the Tory party that you're in this mess. That's what's going to happen. Farage wants to do a reverse takeover of the Tory party. He's talking about low taxes. He's talking about properly controlling immigration. He's even talking about increasing the birth rate by removing the two-child benefit cap, for heaven's sake. So I don't think it is a protest vote. I think it's much, much deeper. And I think it actually could potentially lead to a realignment. Can't write off the Tory party ever, but it'd be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Two quick papers. Daily Express, vote Tory, continue to carry the torch of conservatism.
Feels like a bit of a howl of anguish from them, doesn't it?
It feels like the 1950s to me.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
also the torch. I mean, the Conservative logo has been a tree for goodness knows how long. So they should be talking about nurturing the tree of conservatism rather than carrying the torch. But yeah.
And Daily Star, which often portrayed Boris Johnson et al. As clowns, saying toodle pip there. And just very quickly, Daily Telegraph is talking about homeowners facing a council tax raid under Labour, and very, very quickly, the legal threat over postal vote chaos. Just very quickly, if you can.
So there's quite a few people who haven't got their postal votes. Royal Mail say it's not them. They're delivering them as soon as they get. A few people have called for an investigation into what's happened. But lawyers are saying potentially if someone hasn't got their vote, they could legally challenge the result in their local seat.
Yeah, we will watch that, I think, on Friday and onwards. Stay there, lots more still to come in our programme, including we will get the very latest on Joe Biden and what happened when Rishi Sunak met a tattooed lady and they both met Sonia. Yep, back in a moment.
Well, the issue has been potatoes are quite a challenging crop to grow, generally, historically, for a few years, and they're getting even harder to grow now with the extreme weather conditions we've been having. It's getting harder to actually grow the crop as well as lifting. Can you remember a few years back when we had the drought? Well, that took a toll on seed stocks and also the stocks that we had within the country. And now with the wet weather that we had last year, even this last year when we tried to plant the crop, it was challenging. Lifting was like harvesting the crop was really challenging. The wet weather we had was the wettest winter we ever had on record. We're trying to lift them, getting tractors stuck in the field, trying to get the potatoes out, making sure the potatoes are in store, planting this year's crop as well. It's been a really, really challenging couple of years. We need we need food security for a start back on the agenda. The government needs to look at how we produce food in this country and make sure it's higher up and make sure that we have policies in place to help us. Input costs are rise now nearly 28% in the last 2 years. So our input costs have really gone up and we need different policies and we need stuff to help us combat the extreme weather conditions we've been having. Such things as on-farm reservoirs, that is a great idea. So we can store water on farms, so in wet weathers we can take the water out of the system, put into the reservoirs. That not only helps us then in drought conditions, then we've got water to water the crop, but also as well stops homes flooding. When it does get wet, we can take the systems out. So we really need government to help us put these infrastructures and these are really high investments on farm that can help, benefit everyone, not just us, the farmers. I plan nearly 2 years in advance my crops, what I'm going to grow and where they're going to grow. So it's not so simple as going, I'm just not going to grow that crop. But a lot of people actually have. There's less potatoes farmers now than what there has been. A lot of people, potatoes are quite hard to grow. There are a lot of inputs, as we said, a lot of labour involved. There's a lot of hassle as such. And a lot of people now after this wet weather just go, do you know what, I'm not going to plant them. So if we do, there's not really much else we can really plant. We just go for the basic crops that we grow in this country, such as wheat, barley and oilseed rape. And that's kind of the rotation that they're looking at.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. Welcome back to you. Let's hop across the pond, shall we? Joe Biden, what is he going to do? We have some compare and contrast front pages, certainly. Kicking off with The Guardian, Biden absolutely not considering quitting is their front page. There you go with that article. I'm going to whiz on just very quickly. The Times, right-hand column, Biden is considering his exit, says one Democrat. And in fact, the Daily Telegraph, which I'm not sure we have, Biden considers standing down from the White House race. Lots inside the Times World section as well. You know, Ali, what's he going to do?
He's got to go. Joe Biden is a committed American. Apparently, he's very selfless.
Oh, it's not that page, actually, is it? But anyway, don't worry. We'll come back to that in a minute.
This is his selfishness holding back American democracy now. I mean, after that debate the other day, it was a disaster. It was a plain disaster. Optics matter. But it was more than optics. It was you're seeing an individual who's clearly struggling. He's not up to it. The question is not whether he can get to the campaign, it's whether he can get through another 4 years of being leader of the free world with everything that entails. I think it's actually cruel what's happening to Joe Biden at the moment. I think he's got to be spoken to in a darkened room, and the only person that can really do that is his wife, Jill Biden, to say, look, Joe, you've had a decent run. You now need to do the honourable thing and stand aside for the sake of the party, but also for the sake of the country. He's simply not up to it. It's really tragic to watch.
Yeah, I read out a poll yesterday that said Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom would make no difference to the end polling. The only person who would was Michelle Obama. This latest poll suggesting Kamala Harris has actually become a more competitive opponent to face Donald Trump than President Biden because of concern. And once that confidence goes, you know, how do you get it back again?
Well, that's quite something, actually, because Kamala Harris herself is not very popular with the American people. And that's, I think, been some of the reluctance around, there's a question over what happens next. And the problem for the Democrats now is they're starting to leave it so late that you're limiting the time that another presidential candidate would have to sort of build. Because when Biden's got an incumbency advantage, you know, when you're running as president, everyone knows who you are. And, you know, they've had a good ride with the economy in the US. Problem is, if you're picking somebody new who's relatively untested, it's going to be a shorter campaign. It's very difficult. But I agree with Ali. I mean, watching that debate, I thought it was quite extraordinary actually, how exposed Biden was.
Do you buy the cold and the jet lag from G7 D-Day?
No, because there's other instances of it. And you know, obviously the White House are hitting back very, very strongly and saying, look, nothing to see here, we're carrying on. And you had Obama and, you know, other outriders coming out saying, you know, look, everyone has bad debate days. But it's really opened that can of worms, the questions.
Well, Biden's chief of staff, the bit around this page, we've just cropped a bit of this, I think, suggesting that Biden's chief of staff told 500 White House staff members to avoid the noise, don't listen to the noise. Governor's meeting as well. So we're going to watch this space and see what happens.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, to the Prime Minister and to Sonia Soda.
Well, I'm only an extra in this story.
No, I get that. Can we see it? Paper? Anyway, it's the there we go. Yeah, so you're not in the shot.
No, I'm not in the shot. I was sort of backstage watching on. But no, so I was on this morning before both Becky, who is the UK's most tattooed mum, Rishi Sunak, had an interesting encounter because he was waiting to come on and be interviewed. So we had a chat with the UK's most tattooed mum. But I think the thing that was really standout was, well, A, the pictures, and they've been memed all day.
Sonia,
but also he said his favourite meal was sandwiches.
I know.
Who likes having sandwiches for dinner?
Sonia, Ali,